A heavy silence, thick with unspoken anticipation and decades of history, reportedly descended upon Buckingham Palace as senior members of the royal family gathered for a moment freighted with immense significance. The occasion, as described, in detailed accounts emerging from palace sources, was the reading of the last will and testament of Queen Elizabeth II. This document, penned by a monarch whose reign spanned 70 extraordinary years, held not just the distribution of personal wealth and cherished estates, but potentially coded messages about power, familial duty, and the very future trajectory of the British crown. While crowns confer immense privilege, they also bear disadvantages, their weight both literal and symbolic. In a striking departure from anticipated protocol, the responsibility of unveiling the late Queen's final wishes allegedly fell not to the new sovereign, King Charles III, but to his younger brother, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, a figure whose recent years have been marked by controversy. Why Andrew? What specific instructions, bequests, and perhaps final admonishments did the Queen leave behind? The details filtering out paint a picture of surprise, tension, and decisions poised to reshape dynamics within the world's most famous family. The scene described within Buckingham Palace was one of profound solemnity, the air in the drawing room almost vibrating with contained emotion. Years of preparation, lifetimes lived under the matriarch's steady gaze, had led to this inevitable, yet somehow always distant moment. Dressed in somber attire, the assembled royals, faces etched with varying degrees of grief, expectation, and perhaps apprehension, seemed to consciously avoid direct eye contact, each locked in their own internal reflections. Though physically united in the grand room, their reasons for being there, their hopes and fears regarding the will's contents, were undoubtedly diverse. Some likely arrived with clear expectations shaped by tradition and perceived favor. Others, perhaps, harbored anxieties about being overlooked or subtly rebuked. One unifying thread, however, bound them: the undeniable gravity of the occasion. This was more than a legal formality. It was Queen Elizabeth II's final communication, a last word carrying the weight of her unparalleled reign, potentially capable of redefining not only individual roles but the collective path of the monarchy itself. The atmosphere felt heavy, imbued with a significance that transcended mere inheritance. At the center of this tense tableau, according to these accounts, stood Prince Andrew. His selection, as the reader was, by all reports, unexpected and, for many present, deeply uncomfortable. Protocol and precedents would logically have pointed towards the new king, Charles, or perhaps Princess Anne, the steadfast Princess Royal. Andrew, stripped of public duties and royal patronages, seemed an unlikely candidate for such a sensitive task. Whispers regarding his suitability, his perceived lack of gravitas for a moment demanding utmost dignity, reportedly circulated. Yet there he stood, entrusted with delivering the words that held the power to affirm, to surprise, perhaps even to wound. The discomfort was seemingly mutual. Andrew appeared ill at ease, his stance awkward before the table where the formidable envelope lay, its wax seal symbolizing the finality of his mother's instructions. As he gazed at it, the immense weight of her trust, counterbalanced by the scrutinizing eyes of his family, settled heavily upon his shoulders. Uncertainty flickered across his face, a silent question of his capacity to bear this burden. But choice was absent. Duty, in this specific, unexpected form, had called. With a visible intake of breath, his hands betraying a slight tremor, he reached for the envelope. The soft crack of the breaking wax seal echoed disproportionately in the charged quietness. Drawing out the first page, the tension ratcheted palpably, higher. "This is my last will," he began, his voice carrying through the stillness. For a fleeting second, the listeners might have felt the uncanny echo of the Queen herself, speaking those definitive words. The collective mood shifted, anxiety sharpening in some, a sliver of relief perhaps touching others. As Andrew proceeded, The initial passages reportedly conveyed the Queen's heartfelt gratitude for her family's support and their shared dedication to the crown, words couched in formal yet sincere language. But the tone shifted as he reached the specific bequests, the personal directives that would begin to unravel expectations. "To my dear son Charles," Andrew recited, the formality of the address contrasting with the weight of the inheritance that followed, Windsor Castle. This elicited no surprise. Charles, groomed from birth for kingship, receiving the symbolic heart of the monarchy, was entirely expected. His reaction was reportedly minimal, a slight, almost imperceptible nod acknowledging his preordained position and the immense responsibility it entailed. But the predictability ended there. The next bequest, according to the account, sent the first ripple of shock through the room. "I have given Sandringham estate to my daughter Anne," Andrew read. Sandringham, the beloved private Norfolk retreat, synonymous with royal Christmases and deeply embedded in the personal history of the monarchy, traditionally passed to the sovereign. Granting it to Anne, the diligent, no-nonsense Princess Royal, represented a significant break from convention. Eyes darted around the room. Anne herself, known for her stoicism, reportedly showed little outward emotion, yet observers noted an undeniable flicker of surprise, a subtle shift in her posture, acknowledging the magnitude of this unexpected trust. Across from her, King Charles's brow reportedly furrowed slightly, a minute but telling sign of his discomfort, perhaps even disapproval. This deviation from the anticipated script clearly unsettled him. Andrew, however, paused only briefly before continuing, moving towards revelations that would further challenge assumptions and leave the assembled family grappling with the implications of their matriarch's final, carefully considered decisions. The narrative of the will reading describes Queen Elizabeth II deliberately diverging from established royal inheritance patterns, introducing unexpected collective ownership alongside specific, highly symbolic individual bequests. The Balmoral estate, the family's cherished Scottish sanctuary, became a focal point of this new approach. "It will hold a shared purpose," Andrew reportedly read, indicating that control of this deeply personal property, imbued with generations of private royal memories, would no longer rest solely with the monarch. Instead, responsibility for its stewardship would be shared among several family members. This concept, sharing Balmoral, was depicted as not merely a practical arrangement, but a profoundly symbolic act, potentially altering the traditional dynamic of family gatherings held under the undisputed leadership of the sovereign. The decision did not sit well with everyone, according to insiders. King Charles, in particular, seemed visibly perturbed by this dilution of monarchical prerogative over such a significant private estate. As Andrew's voice continued, the personal nature of the Queen's bequests became even more apparent, particularly as he addressed the next generation. His tone reportedly shifted slightly as he read the portion concerning Catherine, the new Princess of Wales. "To Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge," using her former title as reportedly written in the will, "I give the Vladimir tiara, which stands for grace and continuation." Catherine's eyes were said to flicker with a mixture of gratitude and the weight of the symbolism. The Vladimir tiara, with its tumultuous Romanov history, its survival through revolution, and its adaptation over time, allowing for pearls or emeralds, is indeed a potent symbol of resilience and continuity, worn by previous queens. Its bestowal upon Catherine was interpreted as a clear message about her crucial role in securing the monarchy's future image and stability. She offered no broad smile, simply absorbing the significance of the gift. The focus then shifted to the direct heirs. Regarding Prince George, the Queen's words allegedly emphasized the immense responsibility he carried as the future king, coupling this with the poignant advice that the monarchy was only as strong as its people, a maxim carrying particular resonance amidst the palpable tension in the room. The weight placed upon the young prince's shoulders, even in abstract terms, was sobering. Then came the moment many reportedly dreaded, the mention of Prince Harry. Andrew's voice dropped slightly, according to the account, as he read, "I leave, Prince Harry, a ceremonial sword that once belonged to King George VI." The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. The sword, directly linked to the Queen's revered father, represented service, military honor, and the historical continuity of the crown, powerful symbols to bestow upon the grandson who had chosen a life outside the royal fold. Prince William reportedly shifted uncomfortably, a visible sign of the complex emotions stirred by this gesture towards his estranged brother. Was it intended as an olive branch, a reminder of shared heritage? Or did it carry a subtle warning, a commentary on the duties Harry had relinquished? The ambiguity hung in the air. As Andrew continued detailing further gifts, estates, and pieces of advice, the overarching impression was one of a future deliberately left somewhat uncertain. The Queen, it seemed, had provided a framework, but navigating the path forward, reconciling tradition with these new directives, would fall entirely upon the shoulders of the living. The reading concluded, but the narrative suggested a further, unexpected addendum was imminent, one poised to deepen the complexities and perhaps expose raw nerves even further, leaving the family grappling with unanswered questions about the true meaning behind the Queen's choices. Palace insiders, according to the source narrative, described the atmosphere intensifying significantly after the main bequests were read. King Charles, having expected to inherit the core private estates alongside Windsor, was reportedly deeply unsettled by the decision to share Balmoral. The notion challenged not just tradition, but his authority as the new head of the family. Balmoral gatherings had always occurred under the sovereign's auspices. Joint stewardship implied a fundamental shift. The visible clenching of his jaw and the firm set of his hands allegedly betrayed his disagreement, even as he maintained a composed facade. Anne, entrusted with Sandringham, carried her surprise with characteristic reserve. The estate represented more than land. It was history, tradition, a significant responsibility now placed squarely on her shoulders. A testament, perhaps, to her reputation for diligence and pragmatism, but a departure nonetheless. Charles's disquiet reportedly stemmed not just from the division of property, but from a sense that the carefully laid plans for his reign, the anticipated continuity, had been subtly but significantly altered by his mother's final wishes. It was about status, honor, and the shape of his kingship. While Windsor was secured, the unexpected distribution of the other private estates felt like a recalibration of his inheritance, challenging his assumptions. William, seated beside Catherine, maintained a careful neutrality, his gaze briefly flicking towards his father before looking away. While not yet king, he could undoubtedly perceive the shifting dynamics, the potential future complications. Catherine, ever composed, absorbed the scene, her sharp eyes taking everything in. The Vladimir tiara was hers, a symbol of continuity, but the overall uncertainty introduced by the will was a complex landscape she would need to navigate carefully. Was the tiara a confirmation of status, or another heavy expectation to manage? Amidst murmured background conversations, Andrew reportedly signaled the reading wasn't quite finished, preparing to deliver what was described as a second part to the will, potentially containing directives or reflections that would further test the family's equilibrium. The narrative describes a surprising continuation, a second part, beginning precisely where the first seemed to conclude, circling back pointedly to Prince Harry. "I want Harry to take good care of the ceremonial sword of King George VI," Andrew allegedly repeated, emphasizing the bequest. The effect was described as dropping a second, smaller bomb into the already tense room. Harry, residing in the United States with his wife Meghan, was physically absent, but remained a powerful presence through this specific, symbolic inheritance. The sword wasn't merely an antique. It embodied service, regal power, and a direct link to the wartime monarch Elizabeth II revered. Its bestowal upon the absent Duke carried layers of potential meaning: acknowledgement, admonishment, a call to remember his roots. William's struggle for composure reportedly intensified, rage simmering beneath the surface. From his perspective, Harry had voluntarily relinquished his royal duties and publicly criticized the family. This continued recognition, this granting of a symbol deeply tied to service, felt incongruous, perhaps even insulting. Charles, too, wrestled with the implication. The sword, a mark of respect, simultaneously served as a stark reminder of Harry's departure and the unresolved rifts within the family. To hand such a potent symbol to him felt deeply complicated, a gesture few in the room, particularly the King and the Prince of Wales, seemed comfortable with. Princess Anne, however, reportedly remained the picture of stoicism, her expression unreadable. Having weathered numerous family storms, she possessed a resilience born of long experience. Yet even she couldn't entirely mask a subtle flicker of surprise at the emphatic mention of the sword. It was undeniably a significant statement. Andrew, according to the account, quickly moved from the charged subject of Harry to the Queen's great-grandchildren, focusing on Prince George and Princess Charlotte. "I leave not only the treasures of our family, but also the knowledge I've gained over the years," he read, shifting the focus to legacy in a broader sense. For William and Catherine, this was reportedly a deeply resonant moment. The Queen was entrusting them not just with heirlooms, but with the transmission of wisdom, the accumulated experience of her reign, to be passed down to the children who would one day lead the monarchy. The pressure inherent in this was immense. It wasn't just about jewelry or estates, but about embodying and teaching the ideals the Queen represented. The narrative then describes Andrew taking another deep breath, signaling the sensitivity of the next passages concerning the young royal's futures. George, second in line to the throne, already bore the weight of destiny. But the Queen's words, as reported, also deliberately highlighted Princess Charlotte's role. Though not the direct heir, her responsibility within the future monarchy was emphasized, reflecting the Queen's long-held belief in a balanced institution where each member contributes significantly, regardless of their place in the succession. This laid out a clear expectation for Charlotte's future service. William and Catherine reportedly exchanged a glance, perhaps sharing a silent acknowledgement of the parental stakes involved. Raising not just children, but future pillars of the nation, the Queen had provided symbolic tools, the tiara, the treasures, but the true inheritance was intangible, the knowledge, the lessons in duty and resilience. Finally, Andrew addressed the youngest, Prince Louis. "To my great-grandson, Prince Louis," he continued, "I leave a letter written by hand, a letter for you to learn from, to guide you as you grow." Instead of jewels or property, Louis received something intensely personal, a handwritten message from his great-grandmother, containing, one imagines, wisdom gleaned from a lifetime, navigating the complexities of duty, service, and family, intended to shape his understanding as he matured. As Andrew concluded this section, a momentary stillness fell, the weight of these intergenerational messages settling over the room before the final words of the will were delivered. The final moments of the will reading, as narrated, shifted from specific bequests to the Queen's overarching wishes for her family and the institution she embodied. Andrew's hands, reportedly still marked by a slight tremor, carefully folded the last page. He placed the document on the table, his gaze sweeping across the assembled faces before delivering the Queen's concluding thoughts in slow, measured tones. Her essential wish, he conveyed, was for unity amidst division, strength in hardship, and a shared understanding of the profound meaning found in service. She acknowledged the powerful bonds connecting them, but cautioned that these ties required constant nurturing through understanding and forgiveness to endure. This reported plea for togetherness struck a chord, feeling less like a sentimental wish and more like an urgent, almost prescient directive tailored to the challenges facing the modern monarchy. Princess Anne, ever composed, seemed particularly receptive. The Queen, through Andrew, reportedly acknowledged Anne's quiet but crucial role as the family's steadfast anchor, the one who often held things together during turbulent times with unwavering, understated strength. This moment of explicit recognition, rare for the undemonstrative Anne, was described as deeply significant, a maternal acknowledgement of her daughter's resilience. A slight nod was her only visible response. Andrew then paused, his gaze reportedly directed towards King Charles before continuing, ensuring the message resonated with the new sovereign and all present. He relayed the Queen's fervent hope for the future, that the family and the monarchy itself would embrace change, adapt, and grow stronger with each passing generation. She reminded them, through her final words, that their legacy was not solely defined by the crown passed down, but by the ideals they upheld, the compassion they demonstrated, and the vital relationship they maintained with the people they served. The emphasis was on collective responsibility, on being part of something far larger than individual ambition. The crown symbolized this legacy, but its true substance lay in service, empathy, and strong familial and public bonds. As Andrew finished, he reportedly added that the Queen's work was not over, the mantle now passed to them. A profound silence enveloped the room. Different from the earlier tension, this was reflective, heavy with thought. Each family member seemed lost in their own interpretation of the Queen's final testament. King Charles was the first to break the quiet, his voice reportedly calm, but underscored with unmistakable firmness. He addressed the room, framing his mother's words as an unequivocal call to action. The responsibility they inherited was not merely a privilege, but an absolute duty demanding complete dedication. His words carried the weight of his new authority, and nods of agreement rippled through the room, faces reflecting a mixture of resolve and contemplation. Despite their individual reactions and the potential for future friction embedded in the will's specifics, the Queen's overarching vision momentarily seemed to refocus them on their shared purpose. As the gathering began to disperse, members, moving to quieter corners to process the morning's events, Princess Anne reportedly remained seated. The folded will lay before her. She lingered, staring at the document, her mother's voice echoing in her mind, the call to strength, the plea for unity. The task ahead was immense, but Anne, shaped by decades of duty, was prepared. Her role was rarely simple. The will perhaps made it even more complex. Finally, she rose, carefully placing the will back into its envelope. Taking a moment to compose herself, she prepared to step back into the world, carrying the weight of her mother's legacy and her own reinforced sense of duty. Outside the palace walls, London life continued unaware. But within, a significant chapter had closed, and a new, uncertain one had begun, forever shaped by the final wishes, as reported, of Queen Elizabeth II.